Well, I mean, growing up in the Lima City schools, there is so much different, like, diversity. I didn't feel racism at all through the Arts Magnet, and I really don't see it much here at the high school. I mean, I see there might be cliques, but I don't see racism. I mean, we're pretty congested all together. Um, there are like comments in the hallway. I mean, stuff like that, like being a band geek, being a kid that gets good grades. I mean, you still have those stereotypes, but I've never had like racism or anything upon me like that.
I think economics is definitely a part of it, absolutely. Uh, I don't know that I necessarily know how to put it in a real eloquent way, but yeah, as long as people are poor, we tend to look down on that as a society. We tend to look down on that. And we tend to look down, when we see someone and they're not dressed well, or we see someone and they aren't measuring up to our expectations. We treat them differently, I think. It happens a lot in public places. I mean, you see that. If someone looks like they're homeless, you see how people avoid them like the plague on the street. They don't want to get too close, as though they're going to catch something. And I just think that we need to work on that.
Because I think once you go from that academic teaching, through college and whatever your learning is based out of and where you're coming from, and then you go into the real world, college doesn't make you a certain type of I guess doesn't raise you or make you or give you those certain core values that you may have gotten from birth. So you're still who you are in whatever way, and that, like you said, that's not based on being racist. You still have your core, you still have your experiences, and I think there's a fine line between expectations and understanding, and giving that opportunity and chance to people who you may feel, I don't know, maybe wouldn't appreciate it or take advantage of or be ready.
Well, I think one of your students said it best, which prejudice equals ignorance. Knowledge is the tool that will destroy the prejudicial system in general. So if you teach your kids that people are more alike than they think, they're apt to learn that. But so much of that is a learned environment.
Well, it goes back to, what do you want? What are the schools supposed to do for children? What do you want for the next generation? And if it is truly about creative thinkers, or if it's truly about problem solvers and thinkers, then directly show the relevance of what is happening and how that can occur with good, strong arts education. And it's actually step by step. I still think it's a basic teaching moment where you have to get an old way of thinking out of the way and then show the process. If this is what you want, here's how it happens in this kind of construct. And this is what arts education can do, and it's supporting the same things, the same outcomes that you want. It may look non-traditional, or it may not look as if it is something about pretty pictures and good concerts. It will look different, but at the same time, the results that you're looking for will happen.
I mean, to me, it just comes down to the golden rule, do as to others as you would do to yourself. I mean, I think if you follow that, I just don't see where you could ever go wrong. I really don't.
I have been an individual, for whatever reasons, I was put in unique positions all my life. And I think it's the upbringing that my mom gave me that allowed me to be viewed by non-minorities as a fair person. I've been put in circumstances Low Elementary School in the 50s where there was only 2 black families. I worked over in Delphus at Fruhop Corporation for a long time. This was Delphus, Ohio. I can recall, jokingly, guys would say, "Better get out of town before 3:30. You're the only black person in this town." You know, this was in the early 70s, you know, and we'd kind of laugh about it. I went over there as a 19-year-old kid, and the first day that I walked in that place, I went to the bathroom, and somebody had written the N-word in the bathroom. And out of 200 guys, I was it. I was it. Okay? And so I remember taking a pencil eraser. It was written in ink, and I took a pencil eraser and I erased it. And so it was about 2 or 3 weeks later, I went to use the restroom again, and somebody had written it again, but this time somebody had erased it before me. I said, I got a friend in here, you know. And so I'm fast forwarding as I talk. Fast forward about 10 years later, I think there might have been 3 minorities in there after that time. I think the only reason they hired me was because they were under a government contract and they had to have some minorities, and they saw me walking by and they kind of snatched me and pulled me in. So that covered their minority quota, 1 out of 200. So after about 10 or 12 years, I got involved with the union over there. And the people there elected me first to be the union steward. Later years, they elected me to be on the bargaining committee. I was eventually elected chairman of the bargaining committee over there by this total group of white guys. And when that place closed, the one thing I will never forget was that first day and that last day, recognizing that that person who wrote that N-word that first day was probably the same guy who gave me a hug that last day.
Really, the Common Threads idea now resides in the Lima Public Schools. And that's why this exhibition that we're going to travel with is so important to everybody. And it's been years to build this in order to finally come to the time when we can try to help people, particularly teachers in education, to understand what we're doing in getting young citizens to understand and to get going in being a responsible citizen in their community.
Okay, my definition of racism would sort of be like discriminating against someone just because of their skin or their race or where they are from.
My definition of racism is having a certain dislike for a different type of person.
I mean, my definition for prejudice is basically kind of the same things, but it's basically for prejudice just going on stereotypes.
Oh, that's good.
It's just basically not liking someone because of the stereotype of that race, that religion, stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't think we're born that way. I think it is how we are raised. And it can be very subtle sometimes. I don't think that, well, I shouldn't say, some parents may perhaps definitely teach their kids to feel a certain way. I remember when I was very young, I brought a word home from school, and my father jumped on that and said, "We don't talk that way, that's pejorative. You don't say that." And you know, I'm sure other households maybe that word would be bandied about, and so you would grow up thinking that's perfectly acceptable. to use that slang term, to describe another person. And I just was fortunate that that didn't happen in my household.
But it's not two separate pieces. It's not as if there's an issue here and here's our solution. We ask kids to apply their information to their environment, to things that mean something to them. And with issues-based education, it's a direct effect, something that they have ownership of. You can't have that if you segment and separate education or different pieces. We can't expect kids to make connections and put things together. By teaching issues-based education or having it come from an area that is specific to a child and allowing them to find a solution to the problem, then that's a typical way of thinking in problem solving. You have the problem, you take care of it, but it's not a process that we're used to doing in education.
But I think it was much more enjoyable when they actually came out to the shop and they got to see these designs, where we had a large printer that was actually printing what they had created. So they owned the project a little more. They had a little sense of pride to see that, hey, here's my stuff coming off this device. But I just enjoyed working with the kids and seeing the ideas and exactly what I was trying to teach them to do, which was to get their idea conveyed. It's just as important for my designers to be able to take the idea from someone else, whether it's an adult or a child. I've got to be able to train my own people to be able to take those ideas and conceptualize them quicker and easier. So I felt my designers got a great deal of education from working with the kids. When you do the same similar project 10 or 11 times, that's learning. And so every time a different children team came in and worked with them, they picked up a little bit more.
I personally haven't been completely aware of racism, any sorts of racism towards me. I mean, maybe it has happened, but I've been prejudiced or racism slightly, or it might have been slight, but I didn't really notice it much. But I guess the biggest way to tell people not to do it is by teaching them and having them learn more about whoever they're trying to bring down.
Yeah, because those people learn in their own ways, and just by the different ways that they can comprehend all that stuff through dancing and arts.
My definition of racism would be hating someone just by the way they look or their race, like just something you just really hate them for no reason at all.
My definition of prejudice is when you have a stereotype, and it could be again with race or like religion, but it could be against like high school stereotype, like with jocks and band geeks and stuff like that, like just prejudice on a type of people.